This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Hey, thank you guys for coming out. I'm Adam Carolla, Mark Garrigus over here. Mark was generous enough to bring us out on his private jet yesterday, so that was fantabulous.
I was just teasing Adam. We were talking about I'm staying down the road, and Chris just told me that Kamala's staying there, I guess, or is coming in. And I said, well, I had breakfast yesterday with this third-party candidate, Brock, who's running for president. And, you know, does anybody know who Brock is? Do you know who Brock? Gary knows who Brock is. Brock apparently made his fortune with the twins, whose name always escapes me.
Right. Winklevoss, right.
Winklevoss.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, right. So Brock is not challenged for money. And so he was heading down to Puerto Rico last night, but I had the show, so I couldn't go. But he said, I'll give you a ride. I got the G4. So we were comparing G4s. It's white privilege.
I hear G4, and to me that means you sunk my battleship. That's where my head's at.
Well, except I hear G4 in the old days, and I thought bingo. So.
Yeah, right. It's funny. If you want to, I always say, like, if you want to cover for someone who made tons of money and you don't really want to explain it, you just go Bitcoin. And everyone goes, yeah, okay, I'm sure that guy made a killing. And I always say that, like, in Hollywood, if there's some guy and he's a writer or producer and you worked with him 15 years ago and you can't remember where he is now, you just go, I think he's working on Bob's Burgers. And then everyone will leave you alone. No further questions. He's on Bob's Burgers. Oh, yeah, good for him. Good for him. And Bitcoin is the rich money version of Bob's Burgers.
It's the money version of Bob's Burgers. Well, I mean, you can't explain it. You don't know what it means. I still can't figure it out.
I don't know what it is. I do know I put a pox on money being invisible because I live with three people who think money's invisible, a la Bitcoin. You know what I mean? So my daughter will order a kayak on her iPhone, and then I'll go, thank me, and she'll go, thank you, thank the phone. The phone's the one who got me the kayak. You didn't do shit, old man.
You're the blockchain of the family.
Right, so everything is just invisible money in the phone. So I was interested. So I watch commercials. I hear the stories. I watch the news, and I'm always I don't prep Mark, but I think to myself, I want Mark's opinion on this one. I was watching a commercial back in L.A. for Prop 25. It was the prop commercials are always dubious.
Right. You never, and even the descriptions, because in California we have kind of basically outsourced governing to the propositions. So we don't govern anymore. We don't have anybody who governs. We just vote on it, and it's who can get away with the most misleading description on the voters pamphlet. There's actually litigation about this every year on the propositions, how you describe it, whether it's going to have a financial impact, whether it's not going to have a financial impact, and they're always wildly misleading.
Well, I always get angry because every year when the props come out, or every 2 years or 4 years when the props come out, there's this woman I'm insanely jealous of. She's good looking. She's good, but she has readers on. You know, she's good looking. She's got the readers on, and she's sitting at the breakfast table, and she's going over the fine print of Prop 187. Like, she's really drilling down on the minutia of Prop 187. And at some point, her husband walks in, and she says, have you read Prop 187? Like, have you read all the minute? I got my jeweler's loop out, and I know I'm hot, but I still choose to do this all day, which is read all the fine print for every prop that's come down the pike, and let me inform you as to what they want to do. And so this was Prop 25. This is a woman of color of the NAACP who was talking about bail reform.
Right.
And that's as far as I got. That's as far as I could get from the commercial, because I couldn't figure it out. The commercial showed a nice-looking black man who was incarcerated visiting with his nice-looking black wife and daughter during visiting hours at the prison, and he was evidently locked up for no good reason because we need bail reform. So that's what Prop 25 was aiming to do. And they underlined that it could be done because he was singled out because of his ethnicity, like basically a hate crime.
And what you never realize on these battles for bail reform, because what the battle for bail reform is, and an argument that I and others have been making for years, is people don't understand that bail bonds and bail bonds, when you see the bail bonds operations, they're usually at some right across the street from a jail or a police station, and it looks like a hole in the wall. It's a multi-billion-dollar insurance industry. Bail bonds are always backed by what's called power. The power is an insurance policy that the bail bondsman, when you pay him a premium, used to be regulated by 10% or whatever it is. Of that 10%, the bail bondsman just gets a taste. He basically takes 1% of the 10%. The rest of the 9% goes traditionally to the insurance company. So when you see these battles about bail reform, if you drill down, you will notice it's always an insurance company who's battling to keep it going because the insurance company makes a fortune. We used to make the argument, and I still do on occasion, when a judge would say, well, it's a $1 million bail, and I will tell the judge, look, because how bail works is you either put up a bond, spend, if it's $1 million, you put up $100,000 and then you got to put up collateral. Well, out of that $100,000, you never get it back. If you're wealthy enough, you could put up $1 million cash. You get your cash back as long as you appear. If what I've always argued is, why are we giving the money, Your Honor, to an insurance company? I've got a better idea. Instead of eliminating or setting a bail, just say, have my client put up, instead of a $100,000 bail bond, he'll put $10,000 deposited with the court. So the court will have the $10,000. The court will get to use that $10,000 the entire time that the case is pending. If my client gets convicted and you order restitution, guess what? That restitution, you've already got it. You can tell the victim, boom, here, I've got it. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to chase the client down. If the client goes to prison and is earning 8 cents an hour, you know, you're never going to get the money for the restitution. Makes infinitely more sense. Has anybody, and I proposed this, I can't tell you how many times, judges, if they're sharp, will go along with it because they realize, oh, this makes some sense. I've got somebody who's actually put their money up. He's got an incentive, he or she, to show up because they're going to get their money back, as opposed to a bond. Because a lot of times a guy will put up a bond and figure for $100,000 on $1 million bail, which, by the way, is the bail schedule for murder. Why would I stick around? I'll just flee. I'll go to Armenia. There's no extradition treaty, and you're done. And so if you put up the amount of cash and the person can actually get it back, and they know they can get it back, it's like that old Jack Benny joke, you know, your money or your life. And
or your wife, I think.
Well, no, your wife is taken.
Take my wife, please. Hey, Gary, do you have, you found a Prop 25 commercial. It wasn't the one I was looking for, but it's still one. So maybe...
It's not so much a commercial as it is a sort of an explanation of both sides of the argument. It's a sort of an infomercial.
It's not for one side or the other, though.
It is not.
Oh. How does, I don't know how media works. I see the commercials on TV, then I go find that commercial, and then it's like it doesn't exist. Right. All right, well, I'm curious. So are you for Prop 25?
No, I'm not for it. I rarely am for any proposition, and there's a million reasons for that.
Why is the NAACP backing this one, if in fact the commercial I saw was true?
Because they believe, what they believe will happen is that it'll be one of these things where if you don't have the resources, you don't have to sit in jail pre-conviction. So that's what bail is. Bail is you're presumed innocent, we're setting a bail, and you don't have to post the bail. It will never work out, because what will happen, and I'll tell you why it won't work out. We had this experiment 15 years ago. The county jail in Los Angeles, you might remember, was at 190% of capacity. So if capacity was at 19,000, we had something like 27,000 inmates. It was insane. And somebody sued, there was a court that said you had to get to whatever. You couldn't be over 120%. So what the sheriff started doing on his own is said, if you're going to be, the way I'm going to deal with this, I'll just raise the bail schedule myself. This is what the sheriff did. He said, if a court sets bail at $20,000 or less, I will just release you, and I'll make you sign a promise to appear. So what ends up, you say, oh, that's smart. No, because then what the judges do? The judges started setting bail at guess how much? $25,000. So then the sheriff said, okay, I'm going to raise it to $30,000, and started releasing anybody under 30. Then the judges started raising it to 50 for everything, and it became this insane dance back and forth. So we'll have the same thing happen here. All that will happen is be careful what you wish for, because this will just cause judges to make idiotic findings in order to keep somebody in custody, because every judge is afraid of some DA running against them and saying you're soft on crime.
Yeah, God, maybe we shouldn't make it an elected position, because whenever it's an elected position, then you have...
The way to solve this problem is you have judges appointed. Not right now, you can either run for judge, or in California at least, and most jurisdictions, either run for judge or you're appointed. The problem with appointments are that in fact, Jerry Brown's last term, his last appointment at 11:59, before he went out of office, he appointed Michael Louros. Michael Louros is a judge, and I love Judge Louros. He's a great guy, roly-poly guy. But his qualifications to be a judge were that his dad was the biggest pornographer in the Valley and had written a check to Jerry Brown for $10,000 that morning. And he got his son appointed that afternoon. Poor Michael Louros, I think he's dead now. One of my favorite stories about him, he's in the Valley at a 7-Eleven over there in North Hollywood, and he sees some kids running out of the store with a 6-pack of beer. And he flashes the badges. You know, he used to drive around in this gorgeous brand new Jaguar. And he flashes his badge and says, "Stop! I'm a judge. I'm placing you under citizen's arrest." And the one kid came over with the 6-pack and just whacked him across the head and knocked him out. Just knocked him out cold.
Well, speaking of California, in that case, I was listening to a podcast that Mike August was playing with our own governor, Governor Newsom. And we hate Newsom. Everyone hates Newsom. But this was a great clip.
He rags on him. I just sue him repeatedly.
Right. But it was very interesting coincidence, because we'd all piled into an Uber, and we're all driving over to the Red Iguana to have Mexican food. And yeah, it was good. And the woman Mike had fired up his phone and was, delighting all the Californians in the car with our governor. And the woman who was driving the car, as it turns out, just moved here from California, and says everyone on her street out here just moved from California as well. And so there's a little 30-second clip of Newsom explaining, because the woman who was, it's kind of an interesting thing. So, here's what the news has distilled down to, or politics. Newsom will only be interviewed by people who are friendly to him now, so there's no questions. I interviewed him 7 years ago, and we shan't be talking again. But he now will just go to friendly places, and they'll lob softball questions, and we'll never get any real answers. But this woman sort of said, to her credit, look, people are leaving California. What's the plan? So I want you to listen to Newsom's answer as to what he's going to do about people fleeing California.
Former Governor Brown said it best, where the hell are you going to go? And, I love Texas. Don't get me wrong.
Is that the new California motto? Where the hell are you going to go?
I don't know, but he said it. But it was an interesting point, because where are you going to get so many of the other things in the balance sheet?
But you are aware that I've lived there for 2 decades, essentially. And this is the first time I've had people really talking about not being there, and not that they could figure it out somewhere else. I don't think that's true. I think they can figure out where they're going to go.
Yeah, and then that means, but it's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
Okay, I have a friend who just went to Utah. Beautiful. It may be the right thing for him. They've made a ton of money. They have the ability to take their kids out of public school into private school, and they're doing that. And, I imagine they're not going to turn their back forever on California.
All right, so Mark, as an attorney, just put your attorney hat on. I say to you, good sir, people are leaving your state. And you go, I don't know about that. I have dear friends who just left my state. I beg to differ. I know a couple, affluent, made a lot of money, picked up their stakes, they moved to Utah. Touche.
And by the way,
that's your answer.
It's
your answer.
Beautiful, and I'll put them in private schools.
Right.
Yeah. Did you just prove my point?
It's basically like you're going, sir, you have a homeless problem. Are you kidding me? I was just stabbed by a homeless guy. What? Your answer for people are leaving your state. Your answer is, let me give you an example of friends of mine who just left. That's your rebuttal. That's your rebuttal to people who are leaving your state. How does that work? Mark, as an attorney, could you imagine would you employ an attorney who was like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, they say people are leaving Exhibit A, the Kowalskis. They left. Oh, they went to Utah. All right. You know what? I got a feeling they're going to be back.
Well, the part that I don't understand, and I credit Adam with giving me this. It could only go one way. That's one of your favorite lines. I remember sitting with Jerry Brown, who was a friend of mine for years, and sitting in a restaurant that I've got in Los Angeles, and it was right before he appointed my then partner as a judge, and obviously because I gave him lots of money, and the irony of this is he told me at the time this was the last financial crisis. It would have been sometime post 2008, probably between 2008 2009, and they wanted to do a surcharge basically on the wealthy or people who were earners. And so he was trying to convince me that this was a good thing. And he swore to me that it would expire. And I said, yeah, I've heard that before. It's never going to expire. You and I both know you're into your third glass of Chardonnay. Tell me the truth. And he says, I swear to you, I will let it expire. I swear to you, I will let it expire. It's only for 4 years. Suck it up. Pay 4 years. You're making money. And so I say, fine. Well, at the end of the fourth year, irony of all ironies, he keeps his word. He doesn't extend it. You know what he does? He pays for the proposition to be put on the ballot so that people will vote on it. It passes overwhelmingly, and that becomes the law then, this higher rate. Now, Newsom's solution to the fact that that he's blown a hole in the budget wider than anybody can even imagine is now to tax on yet another state tax. Mind you, you're already paying the federal income tax. Now we're at, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 16% in addition to that. In addition to, because I'm the idiot who's still in downtown Los Angeles, I am constantly fighting with the city of LA who wants to tax me on everything I earn anywhere in the world. So if I've got a case like I do here in Utah, the LA wants a taste of that. If I've got a case in New York, they want a taste of that. All because I've got a brick and mortar in Los Angeles, by the way, where I've got, and I'm not lying to you, I've got 5 young female either employees or lawyers who work for me who all, around 2010, 2012, when LA was on the upswing downtown, had moved downtown. It was starting to become vibrant. Building across the street, Korean Airlines built this beautiful skyscraper. This guy spent close to $2 billion, dropped it in literally right across the street from me. In a matter of, I would say, 36 months?
Yeah.
Our mayor, Mr. Garcetti, who I also threw a fundraiser for, and I knew his dad, Gil Garcetti. You might remember, who was the DA who prosecuted OJ many years ago, and I had many cases against him when he was a DA. I've known Eric, who's a very smart guy. I think he's even a Rhodes Scholar. But he's not somebody who should be in the executive branch. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has destroyed downtown LA, destroyed it. I mean, you hear all of these things about New York City, and you hear about how it's crime infested and it's disintegrated into the 70s or the 80s. I just spent a month in New York City. It is paradise on earth compared to downtown LA. The 5 females that moved down to be within 5 blocks of my office in downtown LA have all fled. They won't live in downtown LA. They've all been assaulted within the last 2 weeks. Gary's even got a tape of one of them being assaulted on the security camera. My right arm, the CFO, she was walking home 4 blocks away. She had some woman chasing her, throwing bottles at her as she ran into the building. The woman was pounding in. It's like an outdoor insane asylum. And frankly, I don't know, I've said this before on Reasonable Doubt, you may or may not have heard it. My fondest hope is that Joe Biden wins because I know Garcetti will go to Washington, D.C. and become head of HUD, and we'll get rid of it.
That's right. It'll be awesome. He can ruin the country.
Yeah, exactly. Let him ruin the country just to save L.A.
Hey, Gary, just for shits and giggles, the last 20 seconds of that clip, just the part where she goes, what are we going to do about people fleeing California? And he cites as an example someone who fled California. I just want everyone, now you're preloaded with that information. Now pass it through your HEPA filter and really listen to this. And again, imagine you're all an attorney making an argument for staying in California. Just play that clip.
A zero-sum game.
Right.
Okay, I have a friend who just went to Utah. Beautiful. It may be the right thing for him. They've made a ton of money. They have the ability to take their kids out of public school into private school, and they're doing that. And, I imagine they're not going to turn their back forever on California.
That is a rebuttal. That's a rebuttal to people leaving California. By the way, that makes you criminally insane if your argument is, I know someone who left California.
And beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, these guys, I know this genius couple, and they left. Now, look, they may have their ashes scattered at the Malibu Pier. So, touche.
They may be back.
They may be back.
They got the plot.
Yeah.
Well, they're one of the ways that the Franchise Tax Board is now, the Franchise Tax Board is our taxing agency in California. And one of the things they've either proposed or it's guidance or something else, which will be challenged, is they're now saying if you leave, 'cause our friend Vinny left.
I gotta, this is a question.
Do you know what their new guidance is?
The guidance is if you leave tomorrow, we can still tax you for 10 years.
Exactly.
That
is
sounds
that insane?
insanely unconstitutional. Right?
By the way, not even the mafia tries that. I mean, it is like the mob will not, if you leave the jurisdiction, you stop paying your protection money. But I mean, that's kind of the unwritten rule, but not the Franchise Tax Board. We got a 10-year tail on you. It is worse than any. By the way, you get out of prison, they only can constitutionally only keep you for 3 years on parole.
That cannot be constitutional.
I've never
there's
heard
no
of
way
anything,
that would ever
I've
work.
never heard anything like. It's funny because they have declared in California also historically there used to be these contracts of adhesion that artists or talent would sign, and it used to be like 7-year contracts, and they've ruled that those are unconstitutional and that a violation of.
Oh my God! I had it's a funny thing. My manager, Howard Lapita, is God rest his soul, or sort of rest his soul. He'll be missed. They should always do this. They go, he'll be missed by some. It's not a blanket statement. Not everyone's going to miss him, but he's Drew's manager. He's my old manager.
I was going to say, you share him as a manager with Drew, and he's been a great mentor over the years to Douglas, Drew's oldest son.
Not last time, but one of the times, Drew and I were in Salt Lake. We were with Howard was here. Drew was kind of reminding me of that. But my first contract, and I'd be interested in your view of this. My first contract with him, I was 10 minutes in show business. I was a carpenter. I didn't know anything. So the contract was, it was illegal to have a 10-year talent contract. That was considered, a decade was too long. So I think it was maxed out at 5 years. But here was the deal. You'd sign a contract for 5 years, and then when it ended, when it sunsetted, there would be a 1 month sort of buffer period, and then it would renew automatically for another 5 years. Now, this is before everyone had a laptop and a smartphone. So imagine it's 1996 and a half, and somebody says, in 2001, in March 28th of 2001, you're going to have to, and by the way, no notification.
Right.
So what happens is you do a 5-year contract, but it's practically a 10-year contract because he says nothing. And then when you get into the new contract, you go, wait a minute, didn't our contract, oh no, renewed for another 5 years. And you go, wait, you didn't say anything. I go, yeah, I didn't have to say anything. You're on the hook for another 5 years. Now, that's not illegal, Mark. If a 10-year contract is illegal, why isn't 5 and 5 with no notification illegal?
I think subsequent to that, and I'm not in the weeds on it, but I think subsequent to that, they passed laws that make those what are called evergreens to be illegal and in violation of public policy.
Yeah, the number one answer, by the way, that a lot of attorneys give when I would say to them, I was talking to attorneys, go, this has got to be illegal. This is insane. I signed up for a 5-year contract. I got a 10-year contract because I'm 3 weeks in to the next 5-year run, and now I got to pay them all the way through the 5 years. And you know what the number one answer of attorneys are? Yeah, no one feels sorry for you. Like, what, that's how we're defining this? You're defining the law based on who feels sorry for who? Yeah.
To some degree, that's how public policy is made. So,
no one feels sorry for you.
Speaking of Gavin Newsom, this is one, and I always say I lean hard left on many issues, and I constantly get people tweeting at me on social media. Then, how do you deal with Adam? How do you? Why is it that you sound like you're so to the right? And Adam and I always discuss this. We say just because you may lean hard left does not mean that you have to outsource your common sense. And Gavin Newsom is a perfect example. I mean, Gavin just signed a bill, and I don't want to misstate it, so Gary can fact check it. But I believe he signed a bill that prisoners now in the state system can self-identify on gender, and then the warden has to classify and house them where they self-identify. And it blows my mind. I mean, it just blows my mind. And somebody, once again, some reporter and Adam's absolutely right. Gavin's got quite a fan base in California. And somebody said, to their credit, well, wait a second here. Isn't that going to cause problems if some male self-identifies as a female and you put him in the women's facility at Chowchilla and something happens there? And he said, oh, that's never going to happen.
It's always going to happen. Yeah. By the way,
there you go. They will house transgender inmates by gender identity, self-identifying. I mean, to me, that's insane. As somebody who's worked in the criminal justice system for 40 years, I will guarantee you, there is no doubt in my mind, I would bet my next 10 years of tax revenues, tax payments, that is a recipe for disaster. And to borrow his line, it can turn out no other way.
It can go no other way. And we're probably 4 years away from somebody who's being incarcerated saying, I identify as the warden. And they're going to go, what? Yeah, I run this place. Oh, shit, hold on. And then they're going to go to the guy's office and go, hey, Bob, yeah, you got to leave. Newsom says, and then you just sit behind the guy's mahogany desk and make policy at the prison, right? Like, why? Isn't that the logical extension?
We had this discussion years ago when this first started. I haven't had the right case yet, but I'm waiting for the right case where it would be, you sometimes read where a guy gets so loaded that he goes into somebody else's either room or house and passes out. And
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
So...
but by the way, if you were to walk in your bedroom and find a stranger sleeping in your child's bed, Robert Downey Jr., you could do a lot worse than Robert Downey Jr., right? Okay.
So I've been
It's Iron
waiting
Man.
I've been waiting for one of these cases so that my defense would be, no, my client identifies that house as his.
Yeah, right.
And they say, what do you say? I say, well, you have to, part of the breaking and entering is it's an unlawful entry. It's not unlawful because he identifies the house as his.
Well, it's if you think about just a cosmic reach, you identifying as a female versus you identifying as the warden. Actually, the warden is an easier place to get to.
Right, it's first base. It's
That's
not, we're
first
not,
base.
Right, we're
Yeah,
not.
a female.
We're not jumping over biology.
Right.
I mean, that's a status or a job, right?
Yes.
Yes.
You could make that case much easier than you could as a female. All right. So Comey, turning to international or national news. So wasn't much talk about it, but James Comey was brought up in front of Congress, although everything is sort of Zoom versionized now. But they were discussing with him about Fast and Furious and the Steele dossier and the FISA warrants and everything else. He had little to no memory of anything. Actually, it wasn't Lindsey Graham, sorry, Ted Cruz did one of my favorite things, which is stupid or liar. He at a certain point, he said, Comey, you're running the FBI. You've never heard of any of this stuff. All this stuff, you signed off on all these warrants and these FISA warrants, and there's this big case going on, and you know nothing of it. So either you are incompetent, or, and by the way, here's the real insult. They go, either you're incompetent or you're lying, and I don't think you're incompetent.
Right.
That's how you say it, right? But Comey, it's either stupid or liar. Either he knew nothing about anything all the time, or he's lying, right?
One of the silver lining of this kind of reversal, if you will, of Republican Democrat is, the Republicans always, in fact, still to this day, they've started the law and order campaign as part of what the Republican campaign is right now. But it's interesting because it's a law and order campaign at the same time as they're basically...
Sorry, Gary, you can find that Ted Cruz little soliloquy.
The great thing about it is that finally people on the Republican side of the aisle are seeing what those of us in the criminal kind of defense world have battled for 40 years. I mean, the things that the law enforcement gets away with, and I don't care what political stripe you are, the judges rubber stamp whatever a prosecutor puts in front of them, and that's both federally and in state court, and it doesn't matter where you are. I do cases all over the country, and the government is given a pass like nothing you've ever seen. And it's frustrating. It's immensely frustrating. I never thought I would practice long enough to see Republicans now basically embracing that kind of ethos that somebody like Comey at the FBI, I mean, you have to we work overtime trying to just hold government prosecutors, FBI agents, feet to the fire, and have for 40 years. It doesn't matter who's running the administration. I mean, law enforcement feels like they don't know. I was talking to somebody 2 weeks ago who's a prosecutor who will remain nameless, and one of the most prominent prosecutors in the country. And that person, I won't identify the gender, although she could self-identify any way she wants, was saying as recently as 2014, I mean, understand this, as recently as 2014, their understanding of their Brady obligation. Brady is the U.S. Supreme Court case that said over 50 years ago that a prosecutor, understand what prosecutors have a different role than defense lawyers. Defense lawyer, I've got a client. I defend that client zealously within the bounds of ethics, and I know where the lines are, but I have a duty to defend my client zealously. That's not the government. The government has a duty to see justice done. They're not supposed to convict the innocent. They're not supposed to win at any cost. That's been the law for 50 years. But this prosecutor, who I have immense respect for, was saying as recently as 2014, they had a completely different understanding of what their duty was to disclose to the defense. That's frightening to me. And this was in the context of cases where people were being convicted and in jail who they had evidence that they knew the people were innocent. That scares the bejesus out of me. I mean, when you see people in the walking off of death row post-DNA finding that they've been exonerated, that's bone-chilling to me. I mean, literally bone-chilling. And when everybody says, well, you know, there's no better system than the American judicial system or jurisprudence, I say, give me a break. If this is the best in the world, we've got a long way to go because it's astonishingly bad. Prosecutors are not held accountable. Police are not held accountable. There's a doctrine called qualified immunity. I'll give you an example. Right here in Salt Lake City, I've got a case that's been pending for 4 years. Gary may have the video because it's on the Salt Lake Tribune website. It's my client is the mother of a kid who was gunned down by the Salt Lake City police. And this video has got 1 million hits on it on Salt Lake Tribune's website. The judge, the local federal judge, wrote an opinion and dismissed the case. Did not hold the police, said I couldn't even get to a jury. I went up to and argued during the shutdown. We argued, you're in the 10th Circuit here. And so we argued in front of the 10th Circuit. And my opening line to the judges were, you've all seen, because I lodged the video with the appeal. And I said, you know, we're talking about the cops.
The video, I think, you know, if Gary's looking for it or not. But the video, which I've seen several times, is about as cut and dried as a bad police shooting as you can get. Sort of daylight, convenience store, cop gets out of the car, deceased client, walking the other direction, cop gives command to turn around, kid turns around, cop guns him down. But no reaching for anything, no foil in his hand, no plastic gun, no quick moves, no, you know, we tried to subdue him with pepper spray and he was reaching for our gun and, you know, there was none of that. Just literally like turn around, the guy like turns around, cop shoots him in the chest. That's it. Just pure and simple. That was it. That's
right.
What went
and
down.
I said to the it's a 3-judge panel. I said, it's astonishing to me that we've reached the point in America where I'm arguing whether or not these cops have what's called qualified immunity, meaning your immunity, literally meaning you can't even get to it, put it in front of a jury. You can't let a jury decide. And I said, because if you look at the comments in the Tribune, and the client's name is Dylan Taylor, and if you look at the comments, people are horrified, and rightfully so. It's not the worst shooting I've ever seen, but it comes close. And to their credit, I'm still waiting on an opinion from the 10th Circuit. But
have it, Gary?
Here it is.
Yeah, it's all of 38 seconds, right? The cop just jumps out of the car. He pulls up to the convenience store. I'll sort of narrate for people listening at home. He's got the body cam, jumps out of the cruiser. I guess he's alone. This doesn't have a partner. Pulls into, like a 7-Eleven, just parks in the parking lot, jumps out of the car, walks out, walks up to the sort of sidewalk in front of where the car's parked. Young guy's walking away. He's got his gun drawn, and he's yelling commands. The guy has his back to him. The guy, I don't know, did he even turn around? He just shot this kid.
He shot and killed him. I mean, that was it. That's the case. That was dismissed. And by the way, you have to understand something too. When next time you hear somebody slam lawyers or contingency lawyers, remember, nobody can afford to pay a lawyer to take this case. No, there isn't. Rarely does this happen to somebody of means. It's generally this happens to. Adam and I have made this argument a zillion times. Police shootings, I think, are endemic to a class or an economic strata. And this is a perfect example. I've fought this in the district court. We've now fighting it in the appellate court just so I can get it in front of a jury for a jury to decide whether or not this cop should be held accountable civilly. Not even saying should he be prosecuted. I just want to, should he be held accountable civilly, changing money? And that's the fight. It's been a 4-year battle.
Well, speaking of that, the Breonna Taylor grand jury stuff is starting to trickle out. Some stuff as of late, some comments from the grand jury. Do you know anything about that? Do you have any updates?
I'll tell you, one of the reasons that now we're hearing about Breonna Taylor, in spite of all of the fury around it, is because something very unique happened. And I can only think of 2 or 3 times, and it's in recent memory, that this has ever happened, where generally the grand jury proceedings are secret, whether it's a state grand jury or under Rule 6 of the federal rules for a federal grand jury. So you generally don't get to see or hear what happens, especially in a case where there is no indictment. Now, in this case, there was an indictment of one officer, ironically, the officer who actually missed. That's the thing that just drives me crazy. I mean, the officer who missed and shot into the other location was the one who is now prosecuted. The 2 officers who actually shot and killed were exonerated. But what happened was, it's one of the grand jurors actually...
How does a grand jury work? Is it a jury?
This is what grand jurors are, get selected very similar to petit jurors. Petit jurors, grand and petit. Grand are the ones who they serve as determining probable cause. Petit jurors are the ones who serve for a trial.
What's the pool for grand jurors?
They're both the same.
Both the same?
Both the same. It's the same pool. You can get a grand jury subpoena, which means you have to serve for a term, generally either a year or 18 months.
So you'll be notified if we need you for a grand jury?
Correct. And then they don't meet, unlike a petit juror, where you sit for a discrete trial every day generally, except for weekends, 9 to 5, whatever it might be. A grand jury generally may meet on Thursdays, for instance, for a couple hours for whatever case, and they hear a number of cases. And generally you never see what their handiwork is unless you're indicted, and then you get the transcripts, and a lot of times the transcripts, you're ordered to take them under seal and you never see them. What happened in her case was, when the Attorney General came out in that state and made a bunch of statements about the grand jury, one of the grand jurors hired a lawyer and said, wait, that isn't what happened. I'm suing, I want it released, because they were under secrecy, they couldn't say anything, and they thought the public was being misled. Well, lo and behold, guess what happened? The recordings, because they can do it either by audio or with a certified shorthand reporter, which is traditionally a court reporter. And lo and behold, as anybody who knows anything about the grand jury system, the grand jury did exactly what the prosecutors wanted them to do. And that's what grand juries do. Grand juries originally, when this country was formed and by the founders, they were designed to be the citizens to protect against overarching government. That's why we had grand juries. Over the years, what's happened is they've been hacked, they've been subverted, and grand juries are just a way for a prosecutor to do their dirty work. Generally, the prosecutor, when he wants to not make a hard decision and not have to do something that might piss off law enforcement, because prosecutors need law enforcement's endorsement to get elected, they'll go and they'll say, forget it, I'm not going to do a preliminary hearing where a judge decides and where people will see the evidence. I'm going to put it behind closed doors, and then I'll tell the grand jury what to do, and then they'll do what I want them to do. And that's what happened in Breonna Taylor. So they didn't want an indictment of the officer.
So somebody lawyered up, and they said this isn't what took place. I mean, as the Attorney General sort of said, well, we heard we had a had a witness say they heard knocking, but there's 12 other people that said we heard no knocking. There's interesting things. So I was talking about this on your airplane yesterday. You'll be glad to know that along with eating, we were discussing the law in general. By the way, it was like that scene. You should know. So Mark has 2 private jets. He has kind of a baby jet, and he has a jumbo jet.
The big boy.
The big
boy and baby.
Big boy and baby, like the atomic bombs. He took the one we dropped on Hiroshima. We took the Nagasaki. But it was like that scene. I don't know if you guys remember the movie. One of my favorite movies is Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks, right? And he's excited because he's going to go pick up his new BMW that he ordered. And he's standing at the BMW dealership, and a 7 Series comes rolling out. And the guy who's the salesman goes, "There she is." And he goes, "Oh, it's beautiful. It's even bigger than I even thought. It's fantastic." And then at some point, the guy runs the dealer, goes, "Oh, no, that's this. Oh, no, yours is a 3 Series. That's over there." And he goes, "Oh." So the thing is Garrus, your plane has this sort of tan, beige, kind of orange, kind of livery, a paint job.
A shaky Jake.
Shaky Jake, yeah. as it were, has this kind of this sort of sunsetter kind of, so it's kind of a 70s California, a little bit of motif on it. And when we walked into the airport yesterday, there was a plane with the exact same motif on it, but it was a little bigger and a little wider and a little cooler. And I walked into the airport, and it's like, "Oh, that's not so little. That's not the little plane. That thing looks sweet." And I started staring at it, and then somebody went, "No, his is over there." And I went, "Oh, yeah," because I could see the big G on the tail stab there. But it was Gary, was it not the exact same livery on the bigger, better plane?
It was 100%.
Right. So, like, I walked in, I was like, "Oh, I remember it as being smaller, but this is beautiful." So we're talking about the law on your plane, and we were talking about this the Breonna Taylor thing. And so for me, as a carpenter, as an ex-carpenter, I wanted some nuts and bolts of like the no knock versus the knock. A lot of the controversy is did they announce themselves? They had a no knock warrant, but they said they announced themselves anyway, but no one heard them announce themselves, but one person heard them announce themselves. But on the other hand, if they're both standing in the hallway, maybe they said something. I don't know how they got out of bed and got into the hallway and got prone with a pistol, meaning Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, if in fact there was no knocking. And then Gary said, well, perhaps they tried using the sort of sledge, the single battering ram, and it bounced off once. And I said, where are the pictures? You know what I mean? Like, if you showed me a picture of that, oh, you have a picture, Gary? I said, where are the picture? We didn't have Wi-Fi. We're up too high.
Yeah, I know.
I said, if you showed me a picture of the door, I could tell you if they hit it once, hit it twice, or hit it 3 times with the battering ram. If you showed me a picture of the door jamb, I could tell you whether they had a deadbolt, a single bolt, a barrel bolt. Like if the jamb was reinforced. Like, hey, if you had a home and maybe it was a high crime area, you might put an extra deadbolt. You might reinforce the jamb with a piece of steel on the strike plate. You can go to Home Depot, you can go into the lock department, and you can get some stuff to reinforce your apartment door so that the crooks can't just kick it once and knock the finger-jointed pine jam just out. You know what I'm saying?
Another fact that...
But so, Gary, is this...
Gary's
I don't know what we're looking at exactly, but...
There aren't detailed pictures that I can find of the door jamb, but this is apparently the outside of the door.
One of the ironies
Are there 2 dents in it, or one? Because if you hit it with that sort of swinging sledge to bust the door open, if you needed to hit it 3 times, there'd be 3 separate shiners, 3 separate marks on the door. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, basically what you're doing is you're doing a forensic recreation of what happened. Well, 2 of the facts that are just aggravating about this is the number one, at first they reported there was no body cam, and which was infuriating. Then it got reported after that and was released. There was body cam.
There was?
There was body cam after the fact.
Oh, after
so
the fact.
at least so far from what we've seen or what's been reported, I watched a body cam of somebody surveying the interior after the fact. So whether that was somebody on the original team that breached it or not. Number two is, why do you get a no-knock if you claim you're going to knock anyway, is infuriating. And as the boyfriend says, he didn't think it was necessarily burglars or police. He thought it was the guy who supplied the cops with the probable cause, her ex-boyfriend, who was apparently in custody at the time, unbeknownst to him. He thought that guy was there because he was stalking Breonna. And so that was one of at least that was the theory as to why he was armed and why he thought that somebody was breaching him. Going back to, we've discussed this either last week or the week before, what I've never understood, if you think that there are the term that the officers use now and that they convince judges to give you either a nighttime warrant or what's called a no-knock, is you've got to convince the judge that there's exigent circumstances. That's a legal term. And the exigent circumstances is if you knock or if you give them any kind of notice that the evidence is going to be destroyed. They're going to flush stuff down the toilet, or there's officer safety or something like that. Well, the interesting thing, nobody holds up for more than 72 hours in their house. At some point, they've got to come out. So why wouldn't you, if you've got a search warrant anyway, why wouldn't you wait until somebody exits? The safest place in the world is to wait outside, wait for them either to get in the car and you can see whether or not they're armed when they get in the car, or as they're walking to the car, if you've done your surveillance and you know where their parking spot is, you wait by the parking spot and tell them to get down on the ground. Then you go execute the search warrant at that point.
Or you do my idea to round up deadbeat dads in Los Angeles. You hang the sign outside of the Coliseum. It says free cockfight, Raiders fans only, and then noon on Wednesday, and then whoever shows up, we just throw a net over them. We don't have to bust open any doors. No one gets shot.
You may think he's kidding, but this works every year for the Super Bowl.
Right.
Every single year at the Super Bowl they do this, and it's amazing how many people they catch. I mean, they announce a Super Bowl party. They send the invitations to all the guys who've got the warrants out, and they get 100 to 200 guys every single year.
The cockfight is for the Mexican deadbeat dads, but for the white people, we go free rides on a Sea-Doo. And that gets the blue-eyed folks out, and that'll cover both groups, right? Because we want to be even-handed, right? Yes, I would be the worst cop to take on a no-knock warrant at 2 a.m. ever. First thing first would be like, what about everyone sleeping in the other units, you know?
Why do we have to wake the whole neighborhood up?
I'd be like, I used to work construction. I had to get up at 6. If somebody got me up at 4:25 in the morning, I'd be
It's right
pissed.
at your prime REM. Leave me alone.
He's in REM. Leave him be. They'll be out. They got to get the newspaper at some point. We'll just talk to him then. Obviously, there's so many things. I don't even know what could go right. You know, it seems like the probability of busting someone's apartment door open at 2 a.m. would be, bare minimum, a dog gets shot. That's the best case scenario. Like that's your best case scenario. I can't even imagine. It feels like 1 in every 3 of these would result in somebody getting shot, some officer getting stabbed, like something, a neighbor getting shot.
It just makes no sense. I mean, I've never understood. You brought up the example of Lori Loughlin. Also, people know the Varsity Blues case, where all of these rich people were bribing to get their kids in, and why did they get arrested? And you brought up Roger Stone, who they kind of did the president's so-called dirty trickster. I've never understood that. especially in the case, and this is a more recent phenomena, you never generally, at least on the federal side, you generally know when you're in the crosshairs of the feds. It's not a surprise. And so you generally lawyer up, and generally, when I'm dealing with it, I'm talking with U.S. attorneys. I'm trying to convince them not to do something to my client. And all they've got to do is tell me, okay, we've decided, we've heard you out, we're not going to do it. We've got a sealed indictment, and we'll see you at 1:30 downtown. Bring your client. Boom, you bring the client. Well, why would the client go? Well, the client's going to go because inevitably you're going to get bail. I mean, it's a more rare case where you don't in the federal system. Generally, you will get released. Well, the one way to not get released is to not show up when you get notified. So there's a great incentive to show up. And you don't need to deploy government resources and have 20 guys with the SWAT team come and scare the bejesus out of everybody in the neighborhood and your kids and wife and everything else. And another joke we used to say is even the mafia spares the women and children. That's the difference between the government and the mafia. And the state side is very similar too. It's very rare for people to flee. They may miss court appearances, but that's usually a substance abuse problem and not somebody who just wants to flee. Most people want to deal with their court cases, and the amount of resources we expend otherwise is just silly.
You don't think Lori Loughlin would be like, I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to get plastic surgery, I'm going to start a new life? That's... I know, she's going to turn herself in. Why?
Right.
What is her incentive to flee?
On 4 hours' notice, she's going to be pissed. But big deal. I mean, why expend the resources? And generally, this kind of started with Rudy Giuliani back when he was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. He used to love the idea of getting the photo ops. So he would march into a Wall Street brokerage and haul some guy out. Who's going to be against that, right? I mean, talk about playing to the crowd. Haul some guy out and get a photo op and do what they call the perp.
I like Rudy Giuliani now. I just like him. I like that guy, but I like him because of what he does with his glasses. So if you see Rudy Giuliani on Sean Hannity, he's sitting there waiting for his hit. He's got his glasses on. And then at some point, Hannity goes to him and he goes, Trump, coronavirus, take it, Rudy. And Rudy goes, okay, now listen to me. And it's like, what do you need the glasses for? Why aren't the glasses on the desk? And then at some point, he puts them back on again. He starts talking, and then he gets angry, and he pulls them off again. So he always makes a point by taking the glasses off. The other guy does that is what's the Mark Levin. Mark Levin wears his glasses, right. And they both do it. They wear the glasses. They start answering the question. They take their glasses off. They start pointing with the glasses. They get in consternation. They put the glasses back on. They're disgusted, and at some point the glasses come flying off again. I don't think there's lenses in the glasses. I think there's just. I think if he put them on, he would poke himself in the eye. If he just whether the glasses come flying off as soon as they hit. Is that like the hot chick trying to make themselves smart? What do you need glasses for? You're not reading anything. You're looking into a camera. I've done 1,000. Mark, you and I have done 2,000 of those things. There's a camera 7 feet in front of you, and you look into it. There's no reason to take glasses on and off again.
It's so true, because when you're doing one of those hits, what a client of mine used to call the big head hits, where you're looking straight into the camera. First of all, you're looking into an imaginary light. I mean, and you're trying to talk to somebody who disembodied as you're doing it.
And everything's backwards, so you can see you in the monitor, and you're trying to figure out your collar, exactly. And you're pulling on this one, and the other one's moving, and you can't. It's backwards. You're trying to figure out what it is, and then at some point, someone always comes over to you and it starts pulling. Pull your shirt down.
It's always,
pull it down.
It's always how the coat buckles.
Yeah, they sit. They
And you're
start
supposed to
pulling,
sit on the
pulling
coat.
stuff down and pulling you around. They always do this. I like to I realize like I'm bi-curious. They go, "What ear do you want your earpiece in?" I go, "I don't know. Surprise me." I'm from North Hollywood. What do you think? I have a preference? Oh, the Corollas were left ears. My grandfather, his father came here. They're all IFB left ear people for generations. Generations. They came over on the Mayflower with an IFB in their left ear. And then, of course, my father, don't get me started, he was a left ear man. I'm always like, I don't know, what's a better ear? I don't have it. I'm left-handed, but I'm not left ear.
You're not left ear?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm
I'm
a right ear guy.
They pull. I go with the right ear
I
too.
go
I go the
right ear guy.
They start pulling your shirt down and fluffing you up.
Well, it's sitting on the coat. That's the one that's tough because it's for you who wear sport coats. When you sit on the coat, it's a very uncomfortable, and then you're looking into a disembodied light. The whole thing is kind of weird.
I'll tell you what I've learned, though, and it was told to me by Dawson, our engineer Dawson, and I've never done it again. And anyone who ever ends up on, Tucker Carlson or Hannity or Rachel Maddow or whatever, if you ever end up on one of those shows, do not respond. Because what happens is there's a 2-second delay, right? And at the very beginning of every one of these shows, they go, all right, we're going to now bring in from Los Angeles attorney Mark Garagos. Attorney Mark Garagos, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Then there's a pause, and you go, thanks for having me, Tucker. And he's talking over your thanks for having me. Just nod your head. Do not answer. Do not verbally confirm that. They do the same thing every time. They go, thanks for joining us, author, comedian, podcaster, Adam Carolla. Thanks for joining us tonight, Adam. Do that. Because with the 2-second delay, they're asking their first question when you're going, hey, it's great to be here, Tucker. I'm a huge fan. Huge fan. You roll right over their first question. Just fucking nod. Just nod. No verbal confirmation on the first one.
You've just saved all of your media training. Adam just gave it to you right there.
All right, a good note to go out on. Thank you guys for attending our very first Reasonable Doubt
Lake City.
in the flesh. Producer Gary, thank you for pulling this whole thing together. And Mark Garagos, everybody, put your hands together. And until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Mark Garagos saying mahalo. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.